Let's bring in civil rights attorney and Fox News contributor Leo Terrell. Leo, you had 58 accusers, one of which went to trial. He was arrested 12 days before the statute of limitations ran out on that case, and now he's going to be a free man in minutes. What are you thinking about all this?
Well, I'll tell you right now, John and Shannon. Look, I covered this trial when it happened a couple of years ago, and I'll give you my honest opinion. Do I believe that Bill Cosby is a sexual predator? Yes, no question about it. But do I believe the legal system did him wrong? Absolutely. I'll tell you two basic points. Emily talked about it before. One, the deal that he made with the district attorney. He had a deal, and you have a due process argument, and he detrimentally relied upon that. And the subsequent DA ran a campaign on that he would charge Bill Cosby. So it was a political motivation. Secondly, and you know what, those prior bad acts that Bill Cosby was involved in were so old. And if you're going to use prior bad acts, they have to be sort of a similar situation. So they brought in 5 prior bad acts that cover a 20 or 30-year period, and they allow that to be introduced in the current trial. And basically, you have to ask yourself, did the jury convict him on being a bad character, a bad person, versus was he actually being convicted on the charge before them? And I think the court got it right. I agree with Shannon 100%. Look, this guy may get off because he has good lawyers and that he had the ability to finance it. And we want these constitutional protections for everyone. Bill Cosby, a sexual monster? Yes. But did he properly go through the legal system and did he get vindication? Absolutely. You can have both situations occurring in this case.
Absolutely right, Leo, because you make such a good point as we continue to talk about. If he had a conversation which he believed to be a protection agreement against prosecution, if any of us relied on that and then wound up being convicted of something that sent us to prison for, at his age in his 80s, could essentially have been the rest of his life. As Americans, we should not want the prosecutors to pull the rug out from somebody if a deal had been made. Now, we're told this wasn't in writing. That was enough for the Pennsylvania Supreme Court anyway. But, is it your experience that things that are verbal agreements involving someone as high profile as this and a prosecutor, maybe that should have been documented, it should have been handled differently so that they didn't get into this eventual situation where we are today?
Well, Shannon, I agree with you 100%. Again, as a civil rights attorney, I believe in fundamental fairness, but I recall this case. I covered it, and I'll tell you right now, they had a hearing on this whole issue, and they brought in the old DA, and he talked about it. And I think at that particular time, you got the Me Too movement, you got the court of public opinion, and I think the trial judge made a mistake. They didn't have it in writing. They should have it in writing. You should always get an agreement with the prosecution in writing, but they had a court hearing, and notwithstanding that, the trial judge basically discounted the agreement and allowed the case to go forward. And again, if you're going to be fair and fundamental as a civil rights attorney, I thought that was wrong.
So, Leo, you're seeing on the left-hand side of your screen there pictures of the SCI Phoenix facility where he's been housed for a little more than the past 2 years and where he'll be released from very soon in Collegeville, Pennsylvania. Clearly, there is going to be an outcry from some corners about all of this. This really was the first prosecution of the Me Too movement, and a lot of people will see his release as being justice denied for women.
And you know what, John, this is going to be a very sad day because you're going to hear people who were actual victims, women who were victimized, in my personal opinion. But, John, get your ears set up. You're going to hear the race card. I guarantee you Cosby called, again, I covered this. He claimed it was racist. I guarantee you this press conference will play the race card as well, that he was being prosecuted because he's a black man. I think, again, there was politics involved, race involved. You're going to have the Me Too movement. It's going to be a soup, a salad of accusations targeted at everyone.
When this was appealed back in December, did you ever see this happening?
Oh, well, again, there's video and tape of me talking about this. I thought that the prior bad acts were too old, and you have to make sure you relate them. And then secondly, I felt that he had a chance. The only part I'm surprised about, John and Shannon, is that the court basically said, no way, you're not going to try him again. And the argument is you can't put him in the position that he was in when he made that deal if you try him again. I get it. That's the part that was surprising. But he had 2 legitimate arguments. The deal with the DA and those prior bad acts that were anywhere between 20 to 25 years old. They were too old to be consistent with the act that he was being charged with.
Yeah, so Leo, let's talk about that because there are statutes of limitations with respect to many criminal charges or cases that people could face out there. You talk about this break in the accusers and having to show a pattern. If you're trying to show a pattern of crime or of practice of a defendant, that you need them to be more temporally located in time to each other. And time seems to be such an issue in this case because when you talk about years going by, women feeling like if I come forward, there's no way anyone is going to believe me versus Bill Cosby, me versus America's favorite dad, there are often time lapses that take place, and they seem to work to the benefit of the defendant, whether we're talking about statute of limitations or the ability to carve out or to block the accusations of these other accusers. So what are we to do with that, with someone who is so high profile and, people who are going to be hesitant to come forward saying, I'm never going to be believed?
Shannon, good point. Good question. And here it is. The argument is you're going to have to. This is going to be a bellwether case for people to understand that notwithstanding the peer pressure, the person involved, you're going to have to bring these charges forward. A lot of states changed their laws regarding when they can report these actions and how long the statute of limitation has been expanded. But if we're going to be fair both ways, the hardest thing to do for a defendant is to cross-examine these individuals. There's no police records, there's no documentation. So basically, the victim has basically the control of the testimony because the defendant is at a disadvantage of cross-examination, impeachment because the evidence is faulty or non-existent. So the key here is this. This is something that is going to happen, especially with Bill Cosby because of his financial wealth. He's going to get away with this because, as I said, personally, I believe he committed these crimes. But the legal system has to be blind to those issues, and sometimes crimes are not basically resolved in the criminal system. There's potholes in our own criminal system. It's still the best one on the planet.
I'm with you on that, Leo. Thank you so much for the quick analysis on this, and we're really grateful knowing that you covered this case as well. Thank you for weighing in.